Hello, everyone. My name is Priscilla Layne. I'm the current president of the AATG, the American Association of Teachers of German. I'm also an associate professor of German at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And below you see my email address if you'd like to contact me. In this brief presentation, I'm going to give you a history and overview of Black German culture in order to provide some context for a new scholarship that we have for students, which you can apply for. The deadline is January 30th, 2022. Few people realize that Black people have existed in Germany and in the surrounding areas since about the Middle Ages. Here are a few examples of Black people who either lived in Germany before they acquired colonies in Africa or whom German artists chose to represent in their work. On the far left, we have the Black Knight, Saint Maurice, who is commemorated on a church in Magdeburg. Historians believe Maurice was born in present-day Egypt near the Sudanese border, where he enrolled in the Theban Legion. According to Olivet Otel, who I quote here, he was allegedly sent to crush an insurrection in Gaul as a commander of Roman soldiers. He initially agreed, but then changed his mind for reasons that may have been linked to religious freedom, end quote. Maurice was subsequently arrested and executed. His association with religious freedom might be why his story eventually made its way to Germany, passed on by King Frederick II, who welcomed Jews, Turks, Arabs, and Africans to his court, and Emperor Otto I, who founded the Archdiocese of Magdeburg, where the statue of him would eventually be erected. In the middle is Katharina the Moor, a drawing done of an enslaved Black woman by German artist Albrecht Dürer. Katharina was apparently the enslaved servant of a Portuguese merchant living in Antwerp, and this is where Dürer encountered her. Then on the right, we have Anton Wilhelm Amo, who came to Germany as a child after he'd been enslaved in his home of Ghana. He was given as a gift to the Dukes August Wilhelm and Ludwig Rudolf von Wolfenbüttel, and was treated as a member of the family by their father, Anthony Ulrich, Duke of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel. Amo was first educated in Wolfenbüttel. He then studied philosophy and taught philosophy at two different universities before he returned to Ghana because of the racial discrimination he faced in Germany. A lot of people don't realize that Germany had colonies in Africa because Germany lost its colonies following World War I in the Versailles Treaty in 1918. Some of these former colonies were German Southwest Africa, which is now Namibia, Cameroon, Togo, and German East Africa, which is now Tanzania. German Southwest Africa was a settler colony, whereas Togo was just used for resources. The Germans actually consulted with African Americans from the Tuskegee Institute, whom they hired to teach the Togolese how to grow cotton. So this is an example of the fact that not every colony was used for the same purposes. During World War I, the Germans actually used several African colonial soldiers to fight on their side. These soldiers are known as the Askari soldiers and are notorious for their fighting skills and loyalty. It is common to see an Askari soldier depicted alongside German colonial leaders on monuments, such as the image on the left of an Askari monument in Hamburg built in 1938. It is significant that this monument was built 20 years after Germany lost its colonies. It is an example of Nazi Germany's investment in trying to glorify Germany's role as colonizer. The first Black German movement was created largely from people stemming from these former German colonies in Africa, especially Cameroon. At the time, prior to World War I, you had a lot of royal families who would come to Germany to study or do an apprenticeship. When World War I broke out, they were stuck in Germany due to the fighting. After Germany lost its colonies in 1918, these individuals were stateless, and so they formed an organization called the African Union in an attempt to secure rights like the right of residency and the right to work. Sometimes they were discriminated against and not allowed to apply for German citizenship, or they couldn't marry their white German girlfriends. Or if they did marry a white woman, that woman would lose her citizenship. On the right, you see a useful book that explores the history of this German community. You'll find bibliographic information about that at the end. On the left is an image from The Negro Worker, a publication from Hamburg that was published from 1928 to 1937. It demonstrates that Black people in Germany at this time were often political, anti-colonial, and connected to other Pan-African movements. The Black men living in Germany during this time are considered the first Black German movement. They were the first to articulate a Black German identity and attempt to organize. It's important to note that this movement is particularly male compared to the second Black German movement, which was largely female, and about which I will say more in a few slides. While the people from the colonies that I mentioned on the last slide often had children and settled in Germany, the first really significant, sizable population of indigenous Black German children were born in the Rhineland following World War I. This is where the French employed colonial troops during their occupation, troops stemming from as far as Senegal, Madagascar, and Algeria. These troops often had relationships with local white German women, and this triggered a racist campaign called the Black Shame on the Rhine, where Germans warned that if Black soldiers were allowed to police Germans or have sexual relations with German women, it would ruin the country and the bloodline. One example from this campaign is this poster on the left showing a French colonial soldier who is depicted as larger than life sitting on German territory where the landscape is meant to look female. So in the landscape, you see in the background there are hills that could easily stand in for white breasts. There were a few instances of rape among the soldiers reported by local women, but most of these relationships are thought to be consensual. There were about 400 Black German children born during this time in the Rhineland, and they were targeted by this racist campaign. Scientists would claim that their physiognomy and their biology wasn't compatible with white Germans. They claimed these Black Germans were unusually large or very aggressive. A lot of these children ended up being raised in all-white societies, living with their relatives. During World War II, there weren't very many Black Germans living in Germany, definitely not comparable to the German Jewish population at the time. Some Black Germans were noticeable. Several Black Germans were forcibly sterilized by the Nazi regime, like Hans Hauch, seen here on the right with his mother. So on the one hand, he was drafted into the army, but he was also forcibly sterilized because he was not considered Aryan, and the Nazis didn't want him to have any children. You also had Black Germans whom the regime interned in concentration camps. Some of them were murdered there. Some were made to do forced labor in factories. Others were forced to act in colonial propaganda films because the Nazis were interested in recovering their lost colonies. Several Black Germans survived this Nazi period, and some of them wrote about their experiences in autobiographies, like Hans-Jürgen Massaquoi in the upper right-hand corner, who published Destined to Witness. Massaquoi was born in Hamburg as the son of a white German nurse and the grandson of the Liberian ambassador to Germany. After surviving World War II, he emigrated to America, where he served in the military, and thanks to the GI Bill, was able to go to college. He later had a lucrative career in publishing in Chicago and had stints as the editor of Jet and Ebony magazine. Theodor Vonya Michael, in the lower left corner, wrote a book published in English translation as Black and Also German. As a child in Germany, he survived in part by performing in colonial exhibitions. As an adult, he went into acting before eventually working for the Federal Intelligence Service. Marie Nayar, here in the bottom right, did forced labor in a factory during the war. She also acted in several colonial films. After the war, she had a brief career as a pop singer before retiring from entertainment to become a nurse. And in the upper left-hand corner is Fazia Janssen, who was a ballet dancer in her youth, but when the Nazis came to power, she was banned from dancing due to her non-Aryan status. After the war, she became a folk singer and was prominent in the anti-nuclear power movement. Interviews with her are included in Tina Kamp's book, Other Germans, and I will include bibliographic information about these texts at the end of the presentation. Following World War II, there were a lot of African American soldiers who took part in the occupation. As we know, post-war Germany was split into 4 zones: the North, South, East, and West, with the 4 Allied countries occupying different zones. So the British were in the North, the Americans in the South, the Soviets in the East, and the French in the West. Germany was a favorite destination for African American soldiers at the time, who felt freer in occupied Germany than at home in the U.S., especially in the Jim Crow South. In Germany, they were seen as the victors of the war and as particularly attractive potential partners, not only because they were exotic, but because they often had access to sought-after goods due to their military assignments. All of this made them desirable partners at a time when the economy was really bad. About 4,000 Black German children were born during this time, and these children, similar to the children born after World War I, were seen as being inherently foreign to Germany, and the government tried to have them adopted by African American couples. Several were actually adopted by Danish couples and sent to Denmark. Of the ones who remained in Germany, many of them were taken from their families and put into children's homes, where they were often sexually, physically, and psychologically abused. In addition to the Black Germans who were the offspring of African American soldiers, children were also fathered by African students who came to Germany in the 1960s onward, seeking an education and professional experience. One such Black German is Mai Ayim, the farthest on the right in this photo on the right side. She was born in Hamburg to a white German mother. Her father was a student from Ghana. Ayim is one of the most important figures of the second Black German movement, which began in the 1980s. This was the first time since the Weimar period that Black Germans were able to find each other and build networks. Prior to this, most Black Germans were pretty isolated from any kind of Black community. One of the catalysts for this second movement was Audre Lorde, seen in the middle of that photo, the African American lesbian poet, feminist, and activist. In 1984, Lorde came to Berlin to teach a class at the Free University. She intended to learn more about the Black German women she had heard of, as she was particularly interested in building feminist solidarity across national borders. Several Black German women, future activists, ended up in her class, and she encouraged them to publish their own histories and literature, which resulted in this volume on the left showing our colors. The image on the right is taken from a website that you can have students explore, which is all about Audre Lorde's time in Berlin. The web address is included above the image. Now you understand why we named this special scholarship the Audre Lorde Scholarship. It is a scholarship for high school students, a full scholarship that will be awarded to one African American, Hispanic, Native American student, or a student from another underrepresented group to participate in the summer study abroad program for high school students. So this is financial support for you to study abroad in Germany. The applications are due January 30th, 2022, and I will also show you where to find them on our website. So if you go to our website, www.aatg.org, just go to student programs and then student awards and scholarships, and you scroll down and you will find the Audre Lorde Scholarship here among our other scholarships. Click on that, and here you see the application deadline, and in order to actually apply for the scholarship, go down here and click this image, and here you see the application and other information about everything that's needed. So if you have any questions, just reach out, contact us up here. We look forward to hearing from you.